welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're exploring a really critical decision you face when you're looking at installing solar panels,
Mm.
the inverter.
Mm.
And this isn't
Yeah,
just, some tiny piece of hardware. It's basically the brain of your whole solar system.
absolutely. It
Really,
really is.
it profoundly impacts performance, how long things last, and yeah, ultimately your energy bill.
Yeah.
So based on the sources you shared, we're going to unpack the two main types, microinverters and central, sometimes called string inverters.
Exactly. And understanding these fundamental differences isn't just about the tech specs, right?
Right.
It's really about making a smart investment that's tailored precisely for your specific home and, your energy goals.
Okay, so let's get into it then. Where do these crucial components actually live in a solar setup and what's their main job?
Well, think of it like this. Your solar panels, they generate DC electricity, direct current.
Yep.
But your home, everything in it, runs on AC power, alternating current. So you need something to make that switch.
The convert.
The converter, exactly. Microinverters are these small, kind of smart units installed on each individual solar panel.
On every single one.
Yep, on every single one. Doing that DC to AC conversion right there on the roof, panel by panel.
Okay.
Central inverters, though, they're different. It's usually a single, bigger box, often located down near your main electrical panel.
Ah, okay. Down on the ground, usually.
Usually, yeah. And it takes the DC power from a whole group or a string of panels, could be, a dozen or more, and converts it all in one go.
That distinction alone sounds, well, pretty significant.
Yeah.
So here's where I think it gets really interesting for, performance and efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if just one part of your roof gets shaded by, say, a tree branch?
Yeah.
Or maybe just one panel gets dirty?
Mhm.
A bird decides to leave its mark.
Yeah, that happens. And what's fascinating here is the independence you get with microinverters.
Independence, how so?
Because each panel has its own little brain, its own inverter,
Right.
right? So shading or even some dirt on one panel doesn't really drag down the others.
Oh, interesting. They just keep doing their best individually. So this makes microinverters really ideal if you've got some partial shade during the day, or maybe a roof with lots of different angles.
Complex roofs, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or even if you just really like the idea of seeing exactly what each panel is producing.
Okay. And the central inverter.
Well, with central inverter, it's more like a team where everyone's tied together with the same rope.
Right.
If one team member slows down, one panel gets shaded or dirty,
Yeah.
the whole team, the whole string slows down too.
Wow.
Yeah, a single underperforming panel can literally pull down the output of all the other panels connected to that same string inverter. They work best, really shine, when conditions are uniform, lots of sun, no shade.
So that independence or lack thereof really highlights the performance difference. How does that then play out with, the practical stuff? Installation, long-term maintenance is one more of a headache.
That's a good question. Microinverters, well, they can definitely be more labor-intensive to install initially. Makes sense, you're putting lots of little boxes up there.
Exactly. Lots of small devices right on the roof. And they're also physically harder to get to if you ever need to service one, years down the line.
Up on the roof again.
Right. But the upside is if one microinverter does happen to fail, only that single panel stops producing.
Ah, so the rest of the system keeps working.
The rest keeps going. Your whole system doesn't just go dark. Now, a central inverter, it's generally simpler, quicker to install, just one main unit to set up.
Easier access, too, I imagine.
Much easier access, usually right there near your breaker box for any troubleshooting or, if needed, replacement. The flip side, though,
There's always a flip side.
there is. If that one central unit goes down, your entire solar system is offline. No power conversion at all.
Oof, that's a big single point of failure.
It is. It can be a significant concern for some homeowners, definitely.
Yeah, I can see that. And I imagine people are also wondering about, well, keeping an eye on things day to day, and of course the cost. How do those compare?
Absolutely. Monitoring is a big one. Microinverters almost always come with panel-level monitoring built in.
Meaning you could see each panel individually.
Exactly. You can track the performance of every single panel on your roof, which is fantastic for spotting issues early or just, geeking out on the data.
Wow.
Central inverters typically just give you system-level monitoring, the total output of everything combined.
So just the big picture.
Just the big picture, unless they're paired with things called DC optimizers.
Optimizers. What are those?
They're kind of like a hybrid approach. Little devices added to each panel that work with the central inverter to mitigate some of that shading impact and often provide that panel level data too. But it adds another component, another layer to the system.
Okay, so another piece of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And how does this all connect to the cost?
Right. Cost. Generally speaking, microinverters are more expensive upfront.
More units, more labor.
Precisely. You're paying for many small inverters plus the extra time to install them all. However, in those tricky situations we talked about partial shade, complex roofs, their potentially higher energy yield over the system's lifetime might actually make up for that initial cost difference.
So better long-term payback in some cases.
Potentially, yes. Central inverters usually have a lower upfront cost. They are often the more cost-effective choice, especially for larger systems in wide open, sunny areas where you're not really battling shade issues.
Okay, so that breaks it down pretty well. What does this all mean then for you, the listener, trying to figure out your own solar path?
Yeah, this really brings us to the core decision, doesn't it? If your roof has multiple angles, faces different directions, gets persistent shade during parts of the day.
Or if you just really want that detailed monitoring.
Exactly. If you value seeing each panel's performance, then microinverters are likely going to be your best fit.
Makes sense.
On the other hand, if you have a large, simple roof area, it's uniformly sunny most of the time with minimal shading, and you're really focused on keeping those initial costs down.
Then the central inverter looks more attractive.
Then a central inverter, maybe looking into optimizers if you want some of those benefits, probably makes more financial sense upfront. The choice isn't just about which tech is better overall.
It's about what's better for your specific situation.
Precisely. It's about matching the technology to your property, your sun exposure, your budget, and your monitoring preferences for the best long-term value. So thinking about all this, what aspect, maybe it's dealing with shade, maybe it's the monitoring detail, maybe upfront cost is king. What stands out to you is the most critical factor for your own solar future.